hot leaf juice. Always the best way to start off for reading. Chair up a little bit so you can actually see me. So, continuing Cress. Let's take a peek here. Chapter 8. Cress hardly felt the hot water beating on her head. Outside her washroom, a second-era opera blared from every screen, with the woman's powerful voice in her ears, swooning over the incessant shower. Cress was the star, the damsel, the center of the universe. She sang along at full volume, pausing only to prepare herself for the crescendo. She didn't have the full translation memorized, but the emotions behind the words were clear. Heartbreak, tragedy, love. Chills covered her skin, sharply contrasted against the steam. She pressed a hand to her chest, drowning. Pain, loneliness, love. It always came back to love. More than freedom, more than acceptance, love. True love, like they sang about in the Second Era. The kind that filled up a person's soul. The kind that lent itself to dramatic gestures and sacrifices. The kind that was irresistible and all-encompassing. The woman's voice rose in intensity, and the violins and cellos, a climax sung up into the shower's downpour. Cress held the note as long as she could, enjoying the way the song rolled over her, filling her with its power. She ran out of breath first, suddenly dizzy. Panting, she fell against the shower wall. The crescendo died down into a simple, longing finale, just as the water sputtered out. All of Cress's showers were timed to ensure her water reserves wouldn't run out before Mistress Sybil's next supply visit. Cress sank down and wrapped her arms around her knees, realizing there was tears on her cheeks. She covered her face and laughed. She was being ridiculously melodramatic, but it was well deserved, because today was the day. She had been following the Rampion's path closely since they had agreed to rescue her nearly 14 hours before, and they had not deviated from their course. The Rampion would be crossing through her satellite's trajectory in approximately 1 Earth an hour and 15 minutes. She would have freedom, and friendships, and purpose, and she would be with him. In the next room, the operatic solo began again, quiet and slow and tinged with longing. "Thank you," Cress whispered to the imaginary audience that was going mad with applause. She imagined lifting a bouquet of red roses and smelling them, even though she had no idea what roses smelled like. With that thought, the fantasy disintegrated. Sighing, she picked herself off the shower floor before the tips of her hair could get sucked down the drain. Her hair weighed heavy on her scalp. It was easy to ignore when she was caught up in such a powerful solo, but now the weight of it threatened to make her topple over, and a dull headache was already creeping from the base of her skull. This was not a day for headaches. She held up the ends of her hair with one hand, taking some pressure off her head, and spent a few minutes wringing out handful by soaking handful. Emerging from the shower, she grabbed her towel, a ratty gray thing she'd had for years, worn to holes in the corners. "Volume down!" Whoa. "Volume down!" she yelled out to the main room. The opera faded into the background. A few last droplets from the shower head dribbled onto the floor. Cress heard it chime. She pulled her hair through her fists again, gathering another handful of water and shaking it out in the shower before wrapping herself in the towel. The weight of her hair still tugged at her, but was feeling manageable again. In the main room, all but the single DCOM screen were showing the theater footage. The shot was a close-up of the woman's face, thick with makeup and penciled eyebrows, a lion's mane of fire-red hair topped with a gold crown. The DCOM screen held a new message. From user, mechanic, ETA, 68 minutes. Cress was buoyed with giddiness. It was happening. They were really coming to rescue her. She dropped the towel to the floor and grabbed the wrinkled dress she'd been wearing before, the dress that was a little too small and a little too short because Sybil had brought it for Cress when she was only 13, but that was worn to the perfect softness. It was Cress's favorite dress, not that it had a lot of competition. She pulled it over her head and rushed back into the bathroom to begin the long process of combing out her wet tangles. She wanted to look presentable, after all. No, she wanted to look irresistible. but there was no use dwelling on that. She had no makeup, no jewelry, no perfume, no properly fitting clothes, and only the most basic essentials for daily hygiene. She was as pale as the moon, and her hair would dry frizzy no matter how she coddled it. After a moment of staring at herself in the mirror, she decided to braid it, her best hope for keeping it tamed. She had just divided it into 3 sections at the nape of her neck when little Cress's voice squeaked. "Big sister?" Cress froze. She met her own wide-eyed gaze in the mirror. "Yes?" "Mistress's ship detected. Expected arrival in 22 seconds. "No, no, 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 not today!" she hissed. Releasing her wet strands of hair, she rushed out into the main room. For once, her few belongings weren't strewn across the floor and tabletops, because they were all packed neatly inside a pulled-out drawer that sat on top of her bed. Dresses, socks, and undergarments folded neatly alongside hair combs and barrettes, and what food packs she still had from Sybil's last visit. She even nestled her favorite pillow and blanket on top. All evidence that she was running away. Oh, fuck. "Oh, stars!" She swept forward and grabbed the drawer with both hands, pulling it off the bed. She tore out the blanket and pillow and tossed them onto the mattress before dragging the heavy drawer over to the desk she'd taken it from. 14, 13, 12, sang little Cress as she wrestled the drawer back into place. It wouldn't shut. Cress squatted beside it, eyeing the rails to either side of the drawer. It took 7 more seconds of harried finagling before she managed to slam the drawer shut. Sweat or water from her still wet hair dripped down the back of her neck. Tugging out a lock of hair that had gotten caught in the drawer, she hastily straightened the bed as well as she could. "Mistress has arrived. She is requesting an extension of the docking clamp." "I'm getting there," Cress responded, darting toward the boarding ramp screen and entering the code. She turned back to the room as the clamp extended outside her walls, as Sybil's ship attached, as oxygen filled the space. The opera singer was still there, and Mistress would be annoyed at Cress's waste of time, but at least it wasn't. She gasped, her eyes landing on one screen that stood out from the rest, and the single bright green message on the field of black. From user, mechanic, 68 minutes. Oh, fuck, she's gonna see the message. Oh, that's not good. She heard Sybil's steps approaching as she launched herself across the room. She shut down the screen just as the satellite door whistled open. Her heart in her throat, Cress spun around and smiled. Sybil met her gaze from the doorway. She was already glaring, but Cress thought her eyes narrowed even more than in that moment, between seeing Cress and noting her brilliant grin. "Mistress! What a surprise! I just got out of the shower. Was listening to some opera." She gulped, her mouth suddenly dry. Sybil's eyes darkened. She cast them around the room, at the screen still quietly transmitting the opera singer engrossed in her song. Sybil sneered. "Earthen music." Cress chewed on her lower lip. She knew there were musicians and plays and all sorts of entertainment for the Lunar Court, but they were rarely recorded, and Cress didn't have access to them. Lunars generally disliked having their true appearances transmitted for all the galaxy to see. They much preferred live performances where they could alter the audience's perception of their skills. "All screens mute," she murmured, trying to stop shaking. In the wake of silence, Sybil stepped inside, allowing the door to shut behind her. Cress gestured to the familiar metal box Sybil carried. "I don't believe I'm in need of any supplies, mistress. Is it time for another blood sample already?" she asked, knowing it wasn't. Sybil set the box on the bed, sparing a distasteful glance for the rumpled blankets. "I have a new assignment for you, Crescent. I trust you noticed that one of our primary feeds from New Beijing was disabled last week." Cress willed herself to look natural, collected, and unworried. "Yes, the recorder from the Emperor's office." "Her Majesty found it to be one of the more lucrative feeds we've placed on Earth. She wants another programmed and installed immediately." She opened the box, revealing a collection of chips and recording devices. "As before, the signal should be untraceable. We don't want it drawing any attention to itself." Cress nodded, perhaps too enthusiastically. "Of course, mistress. It won't take long. I can have it finished tomorrow, I'm sure. Will it be disguised in a light fixture like the last one?" "No, we risked too much by brainwashing the maintenance attendant before. Make it so that it can be more easily hidden, able to be embedded on a wall hanging, perhaps." "I'm so sorry." That was absolutely disgusting. Why is the narrator burping again? Can't he get through one reading without doing that? No, Sybil, I can't, and I do apologize. Very well. One of the other thaumaturges will likely handle the installation themselves during our upcoming visit. Cress's head was still bobbing. Yes, of course, no problem. Sybil scowled. Perhaps Cress was being too agreeable. She stopped nodding, but it was difficult to focus as a clock ticked in her head. If Cinder and the others spotted the lunar pod ship attached to her satellite, they would think Cress had led them into a trap. But Mistress Sybil never stayed long. Surely she would be well gone before the hour was up. Surely. God, I'm getting a headache just thinking about this. Oh, hang on, no, I need a second, for real. Hold up. No, I'm serious, like, just imagining the stress that Cress has to be in, that her one chance of escaping a lifetime of being trapped in this satellite is about to be gone in an instant because Sybil decided to do a surprise visit. God, I need Tylenol. I'm worried. I'm genuinely worried. Is there anything else, Mistress? Have you anything to report on the other new earthen feeds? Cress strained to think about any news she may have heard about in the past few days. Her skills in cyber espionage went beyond research in hacking into earthen feeds and databases, or programming spy equipment to be strategically installed in various homes and offices of high-ranking officials. It was also one of her responsibilities to monitor those feeds and report anything interesting back to Sybil and Her Majesty. It was the most voyeuristic part of her job, which she hated. But at least if Sybil was asking her about it now, it meant that she and the Queen hadn't had time lately to monitor the feeds themselves. Everyone's focused on the wedding, Cress said. Lots of talk of travel arrangements and scheduling diplomatic meetings while so many representatives are together in New Beijing. She hesitated before continuing. A lot of the Earthens are questioning Emperor Cato's decision to enter into the alliance and whether or not it will really signal an end to the attacks. The European Federation recently placed a large order from a weapons manufacturer. It seems they are preparing for war. I could find the specifics of that order if you want. Don't waste your time. We know what they're capable of. Anything else? Cress searched her memory. She considered telling Mistress Sybil that one UK representative, a Mr. Bristol something, was trying to make a political statement by rejecting his invitation to the royal wedding, but she determined that his decision might still change. Knowing Her Majesty, she would want to set the man up as an example, and Cress didn't want to think what she would do to him or his family. No, mistress, that's all. And what about the cyborg? Any progress there? She had told the lie so many times it was effortless on her tongue. I'm sorry, mistress, I haven't found anything new. Do you suppose, Crescent, that her ability to go without detection is due to a similar technique we use to disguise our ships? Cress pulled her damp hair away from her neck. Perhaps. I understand she's a talented mechanic. Her skills may include software jamming. And if that's the case, would you be able to detect it? Cress opened her mouth but hesitated. She most likely could, but telling Sybil that would be a mistake. She would only wonder why Cress hadn't thought of doing it sooner. I don't think so, mistress, but I'll try. I'll see what I can find. See that you do. I'm sick of making excuses for you. Cress tried to look regretful, but her fingers were tingling with relief. Sybil always said some variation of this line when she was preparing to leave. Of course, mistress. Thank you for bringing me this new work, mistress. A chime sang through the room. Oh, fuck. Cress recoiled, but instantly attempted to morph her expression into nonchalance. Just another chime. Just another non-suspicious alert for one of Cress's non-suspicious hobbies. Sybil had no reason to question it. But Sybil's attention had swerved to the single black screen that had awoken with the alert. A new message had appeared. Message received from Mechanic, ETA 41 minutes. Need final coordinates. Oh, fuck. The satellite tilted beneath Cress, but no, it was her own balance leaving her. What is this? Sybil said, nearing the screen. It's a game. I've been playing it with the computer. Her voice squeaked. Her face was warming, cooled only when her damp hair clung to her cheeks. There was a long silence. Cress tried to feign indifference. Just a silly game. Imagining the computer as a real person. You know how my imagination can be when I get lonely? Sometimes it's nice to have someone to talk to, even if they're not Sybil grabbed Cress's jaw, shoving her against a window that overlooked the blue planet. "Is it her? Have you been lying to me?" Sybil hissed. Cress couldn't speak, her tongue heavy with terror, as if she were pinned by a glamour. But this was not magic. This was only a woman strong enough and angry enough to tear Cress's arms from their sockets, to break her skull against the corner of the desk. "You had better not even think to lie to me, Crescent. How long have you been communicating with her?" Her lips trembled. "Since yesterday," she half-sobbed. "I was trying to earn her trust. I thought if I could get close enough, I could tell you, and—" A slap sent the world spinning, and Cress hit the floor. Her cheek burned, and her brain took a moment to stop rattling inside her skull. "You hoped she was going to rescue you," said Sybil. No, mistress. After all I've done for you, saved your life when your parents meant to have you slaughtered." "I know, mistress. I was going to bring her to you, mistress. I was trying to help." "I even allowed you net access to watch those disgusting earthen feeds. And this is how you repay me?" Sybil eyed the screen where the message still lingered. "But at least you have finally done something useful." Cress shuddered. Her brain began to cloud at the instinctual need to run, to escape. She shoved herself off the floor, but tripped on her hair and landed hard against the closed doors. Her fingers sought out the keypad, punching in the command. The door zipped open. She did not wait to see Sybil's reaction. "Closed door!" Cress flew down the corridor, lungs burning. She couldn't breathe. She was hyperventilating. She had to get out. Another door loomed before her, an identical switch beside it. She barreled into it. "Open!" It did. She stumbled forward, and her abdomen smacked into the railing. She grunted from the collision, bracing herself before she could topple over it and straight into the cockpit. God. Okay. Alright. So she's going into the ship, and she's going to leave Sybil on the satellite. Okay. She stood, panting and staring wide-eyed into the interior of a small pod ship. Lights and flashing panels and screens glowed all around her. The windows formed a wall of glass separating her from a sea of stars. And there was a man. His hair was the color of golden straw, and his body strong and broad in his royal uniform. He looked like he could be threatening, but at that moment he seemed only astonished. He raised himself from the pilot's seat. They gawked at each other as Cress struggled to find words amid her tumbling thoughts. Sybil did not come alone. Sybil had a pilot that brought her here. Another human being that knew Cress existed. No, another lunar that knew Cress existed. "Help me," she tried to whisper, gulping when the words couldn't form. "Please, please help me." He shut his mouth. Cress's hands twitched on the bar. "Please." Her voice broke. The man flexed his fingers, and she thought, was it only her imagination? His eyes seemed to soften, to sympathize, or to calculate. His hands shifted toward the controls. The command to shut the door, to disengage from the satellite, to fly her far away from this prison. "I don't suppose you killed her?" "No, I don't suppose you killed her," he said. The words seemed like they came from a different language altogether. He said them emotionlessly. A simple question, expecting a simple answer. "Killed her." "Killed her?" Before she could form a response, the guard's eyes sped past her. Sybil grabbed a fistful of Cress's hair and yanked her back toward the corridor. Cress screamed and collapsed onto the ground. "Jason, we are about to have company," said Sybil, ignoring Cress's sobs. "Separate yourself from the satellite, but stay close enough to have a good visual without drawing suspicion. When an earthen ship draws close, they will likely release one pod ship. Wait until the pilot has boarded with the satellite, then rejoin us using the opposite entry hatch. I will ensure the clamp is pre-extended." Cress trembled, nonsense words falling from her in hopeless pleas. The man's sympathy and astonishment were gone, vanished as if they had never been there. Perhaps they never had. He jerked his head in a nod. No question. No thought to disobey. Though Cress screamed and kicked, Sybil managed to drag her all the way back to the satellite's main room, tossing her like a bag of broken android parts on the floor. The door shut behind them, dividing her from the exit, from her freedom, and with its familiar clang, she knew she would never be free. Sybil was going to kill her, as she was going to kill Lynn Cinder and Carswell Thorne. When Cress pushed back her mess of hair, a sob shook her to the bones. Sybil was smiling. "I suppose I should thank you. Lynn Cinder is going to come to me, and our queen will be so pleased. Bending down, Sybil grasped Cress's chin in a claw-like grip. Unfortunately, I don't think you'll survive long enough to receive your reward. As if I needed more reason to hate Sybil. I am afraid. I am genuinely afraid. I'm actually... So, before this, I thought Sybil was just a heartless wretch, right? But now I realize... Sybil's a bitch. And not in a good way. Books. Best weapons in the world. They can lead you to a land of pure imagination. And in this land of imagination, we have to fight a moon priest who's waiting on a satellite with the girl that she's trapped there for 13 plus years. Or however old. No, Scarlet's 16. 19? I don't know. However long, not Scarlet, Cress. We're fighting a moon priest on a space station with a assumingly of age young girl with very long hair. Chapter 9. Cinder groaned, the impact of her most recent landing still reverberating through her spine. The cargo bay ceiling spun and wobbled in her vision. Was that necessary? Oh, that's Cinder. Was that necessary? Wolf and Scarlet appeared above her. I'm sorry, said Wolf. I thought you had control. Are you all right? Frustrated and sore, but yes, I'm fine. She forced herself to take Wolf's outstretched hand. He and Scarlet both helped her to her feet. You're right. I lost focus. I felt your energy snap out of my hold, like a rubber band. That was moments before Wolf completed the maneuver she'd managed to halt for 6 whole seconds, grasping her arm and tossing her over his shoulder. She rubbed her hip. I need a moment. Maybe you should call it quits for the day. For the day, said Scarlet. We're almost at to the satellite. Aiko chimed in. Estimated time of arrival in 9 minutes, or is 9 minutes, 34 seconds, which by my estimation is enough time for Cinder to be defeated and embarrassed in 7 more brawls. Cinder glared up at the ceiling. Also just enough time to disconnect your audio device. Since we have a few minutes, said Scarlet, maybe we should talk about how to handle this girl. If she's been stuck on a satellite for 7 years, with no one to talk to but the lunar thaumaturge, she might be socially awkward. I think we should all make an effort to be extra welcoming and supportive and try not to terrify her. A laugh came from the cockpit, and Thorn appeared in the doorway, strapping a gun holster around his waist. You're asking the cyborg fugitive and the wild animal to be the welcoming committee? That's adorable. Scarlet planted her hands on her hips. I'm saying we should be aware of what she's been through and try to be sensitive to that. This may not be an easy transition for her. Thorn shrugged. The Rampion will be like a 5-star hotel after living on that satellite. She'll adjust. I'll be nice to her, said Aiko. I can take her net shopping and she can help me pick out my future designer wardrobe. Look, I found this custom escort shop that has the best accessories and some discount models. What would you think of me with orange hair? The net screen on the wall switched to an escort droid sale listing. The image of a model was slowly rotating, showing off the android's perfect proportions, peachy skin, and royalty-approving posture. She had purple irises and cropped tangerine hair, and a tattoo of an old-fashioned carousel that rotated around her ankle. Man, Aiko sure knows how to pick 'em. Honestly, sounds hot. The purple irises are what get me. Cinder squeezed an eye shut. Aiko, what does this have to do with the satellite girl? I was getting to that! The screen scrolled through a menu, landing on hair accessories and dozens of icons clustered together, showing everything from dreadlocked wigs to cat ear hair headbands to rhinestone-encrusted barrettes. You know, in case you got a Neko finish. Anyway. Just think how much potential she has with hair like that! You see? Said Thorn, nudging Scarlet in the shoulder. Aiko and the imprisoned, socially awkward satellite girl, best friends forever. Now what I'm worried about is how we're going to be dividing the reward money when this is all over, because this ship is starting to feel awfully crowded, and I'm not sure I'm happy with all of you cutting into my profits.
What reward money?
Asked Scarlet. The reward Cinder's going to pay us out of the lunar treasury when she's queen. Cinder rolled her eyes. I should have guessed. And that's just the beginning. By the end of this escapade, the whole world will see us as heroes. Imagine the fame and fortune, the sponsorship opportunities, the marketing requests, net dramatization rights. I think we should discuss the profit division sooner rather than later, because I'm considering a 60-10-10-10-10 split right now.
Am I the fourth 10%? Said Aiko.
I didn't say the thing right.
Or is that the satellite girl? Because if it's the satellite girl, I'm going on strike. Can we discuss the imaginary money later? Said Cinder. Like, maybe when there's actually money to discuss? Suggested Scarlet. Besides, don't you still have to prepare the pod ship? Oui, mademoiselle.
With a salute. Oui, mademoiselle. With a salute, Thorn grabbed a handgun off a storage crate and sank it into the holster. Scarlet cocked her head.
Are you sure you don't want me to go? It's going to require some precise maneuvering to attach to the docking clamp. And from what Cinder told me about your flying skills...
What do you mean? What did Cinder say about my flying skills? Scarlet and Cinder shared a look.
Naturally, she told me that you're a fantastic pilot,
said Scarlet, grabbing her red hoodie off a crate. Though it had been badly torn in Paris, she'd stitched it up as well as she could.
Absolutely top-notch.
I think she was practicing her sarcasm, said Aiko. Thorn glared, but Cinder only shrugged.
I'm just saying,
continued Scarlet, threading her arms through the sleeves.
It may not be an easy attachment. You have to dock slowly, and don't leave the pod until you're sure the satellite system is compatible and you have a secure connection.
I can handle it, said Thorn, winking. He reached out and gave Scarlet's nose a tweak, ignoring how Wolf bristled behind her. But you are so sweet. But you sure are sweet to be so concerned about me. And then there's a break, so we're changing scenes. Why are you... My dog's licking the door for some reason. That's weird. The docking clamp engaged on Thorn's second attempt, which he thought was pretty good for never having docked with a satellite before. He hoped Scarlet was watching after she'd so brazenly doubted his abilities. He checked the connection before putting the pod ship into standby mode and unlatching his harness. Through the window, he could see the curving side of the satellite and one of its circular gyrodines, whirling lazily overhead, propelling the satellite through space. He could see only the edge of the docking hatch through the ship's windows, but it appeared secure, and his instruments were telling him that the pressure and oxygen levels made it safe to exit his ship. He tugged his collar away from his throat. He was not, by nature, a paranoid man, but dealing with lunars gave him more hesitation than he was accustomed to. Even young, semi-cute ones. Young, semi-cute ones who had probably been driven insane by years of solitude. Thorn unlatched the pod ship door, and it swung upward, revealing 2 steps up to a ramp edged with a rail, and beyond it a narrow corridor. His ears popped with the change in pressure. The entrance into the main satellite was still shut tight, but as he approached, he heard a hissing noise, and the doors parted, sliding seamlessly into the walls. He recognized the room from the decom connection. Dozens of flat, clear screens with some overhead storage cabinets, a mussed-up bed with worn blankets, a wash of bluish-white light coming from built-in fixtures. A door to the left led to what he assumed was a washroom, and directly opposite him there was a door to the second podship hatch. The girl was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands in her lap, her hair pooling over both shoulders and ending in a bundle of knotted frizz by her shins. She was smiling, a close-lipped, polite look that was entirely at odds with the nerve-bundled reaction she'd had over the decom. But that smile faltered when she saw him.
"Oh, it's you," she said, tilting her head to the side. "I was expecting the cyborg."
No need to look so disappointed. Thorn thrust his hands into his pockets. Cinder can fix ships, but she's useless at flying them. I'll be your escort today. Captain Carswell Thorn, at your service. He tipped his head towards her. Rather than swoon or flutter her lashes, as was duly expected of her, the girl looked away and glowered at one of the screens. Coughing, Thorn rocked back on his heels. Somehow, he'd expected that a girl with no prior human interaction would be a lot easier to impress. Are you all packed up? We don't like to loiter in one spot for too long. Her eyes flickered to him, hinting at annoyance. No matter, she murmured to herself. Jason and I will go to her then. Thorn frowned, feeling a Oh, fuck! Yo, hold up! Oh, Sybil's doing the... Oh! Oh! No, that's not good! Oh my god! Oh, that's very, 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 very not good. Jason and I will go to her then? Oh, Sybil's doing the thing that, what's his face? The other thaumaturge did when Scarlet was in France. They're making Thorn see as if she was Cress. Oh, the trap's been set! This isn't good! Oh my god, I'm scared. I'm scared! Thorn frowned, feeling a twist of regret at his previous mocking, even if it had been only in his own head. What if the solitude really had driven her crazy? Jason? She stood up, her hair swinging against her ankles. He hadn't been able to tell how tall she was before, but now seeing that she couldn't have been more than 5 feet, he felt comforted. Crazy or not, she was harmless. Probably. Jason, my guard. Jason, my guard. Right. Well, why don't you invite your friend Jason to join us, and let's get going. Oh, I don't think you'll be getting far. She stepped towards him, and in that moment she changed. The nest of hair grew dark and silky as a raven's wing. Her eyes changed from sky blue to slate gray. Her pale skin turned golden, and her body stretched upward, becoming tall and graceful. Even her clothes changed from the plain, worn day dress to a dove-white coat with long sleeves. Thorn was quick to bury his surprise. A thaumaturge. Figured. Not one for denial, he accepted the immediate resignation with a stiffening of his shoulders. It had all been a trap, then. The girl had been bait, or perhaps she'd been in on it all along. Funny, he usually had better instincts when it came to these sorts of things. He stole another glance around the room, but there was no sign of the girl. Something clanged outside the second entry hatch, shaking the satellite. Hope. His crew must have noticed something was wrong. That would be them now, aboard the second pod ship. He called up his most practiced, most charming grin and reached for his gun. He even felt a sting of pride when he managed to get it all the way out of his holster before his arm froze of its own accord. Thorn shrugged with the one uncontrolled shoulder. You can't blame me for trying. No, he wouldn't say it like that. He would say, you can't blame me for trying. No. How would Thorn say that? That's Captain Carswell Thorn, getting the gun. You can't blame me for trying. That's it. That's the one. The thaumaturge smirked, and Thorn's fingers loosened. The gun clattered to the ground. Captain Carswell Thorn, is it? That's right. I'm afraid you won't have claim to the title for long. I'm about to commandeer your rampion for the Queen. I am sorry to hear that. Additionally, I assume you are aware that assisting a wanted fugitive, such as Lynn Cinder, is a crime punishable by death on Luna. Your sentence is to be carried out immediately. Efficiency. I respect that. No. Efficiency. I respect that. The second entry door opened behind her. Thorn tried to send mental warnings to his companions. It was a trap. Be ready. But it was not Cinder or Scarlet or Wolf who stood in the second entry hatch, but a lunar guard. Thorn's hope began to wither. Jason will be boarding the Rampion using its own pod ship. Ah, you're Jason, said Thorn. I thought she was making you up. They ignored him, but he was rather used to that. Go see that it's ready to disembark as soon as I'm finished here. The guard respectfully inclined his head and moved to follow her commands. Careful, said Thorn. It wasn't an easy connection. Required some real precise maneuvering. In fact, would you like me to come disconnect the ship for you, just to make sure you do it right? The guard eyed him smugly as he passed, not as empty-eyed as he'd appeared before, but he didn't respond as he slipped into the corridor, heading toward Thorn's pod ship. The thaumaturge grabbed a blanket from the bed and tossed it at Thorn. He would have caught it on reflex, but it wasn't necessary. His hands did all the work without him. Soon he found himself wrapping the blanket around his own wrists and tying it into intricate knots, giving the blanket a final yank with his teeth to tighten it into place. I look forward to returning to Luna aboard your ship and spreading the good news that Lynn Cinder is no longer a threat to our crown. His eyebrows twitched. Anything I can do to assist Her Majesty's benevolent cause. No, he wouldn't say it through gritted teeth, because this is still him. He's being forced to do her bidding, but he's not being made to say this, so he would say, Anything I can do to assist Her Majesty's benevolent cause. The thaumaturge strode to a screen beside the hatch and entered a command, a security code followed by a complicated set of instructions. I had first considered turning off the life support and letting you and Crescent gasp for air as the oxygen was used up, but that would take too long, and I would hate to give you an opportunity to free yourselves and call for assistance. Instead, I will be merciful. Finished, she straightened her long sleeves. Consider yourself lucky that it will be quick. I always consider myself lucky. Her gaze became hard as sterling, and Thorn found himself marching toward the open door that led to the washroom. As he got closer, he saw the girl tied up with a sheet around her hands, knees, and ankles, and a cloth gag in her mouth. Remnants of tears streaked down her blotchy face. Her hair was a tangled mess on the ground all around her, many of the locks cut up in her bindings. Thorn's gut tightened. He had been sure they had been betrayed she had betrayed them, but her trembling body and horrified expression said otherwise. His knees gave way as he landed on the floor with a grunt. The girl winced. Drawing a sharp breath through his nostrils, Thorn glared up at the thaumaturge. Is all this necessary? You're scaring the poor girl. Crescent has no reason to be upset. It was her betrayal that brought us to this moment. Right, the 5-foot-tall girl tied up and gagged in the bathroom is always the one to blame. Besides, the thaumaturge continued as if he hadn't spoken, I'm granting Crescent her greatest wish. I'm sending her to Earth. She held up a small shimmering chip, identical to the decom Cinder had been carrying around with her. I'm sure Crescent wouldn't mind if I keep this. After all, property of Her Majesty. Oh, it is, after all, property of Her Majesty. Her sleeves whipped behind her as she left. Thorn heard her heels clipping down the docking hatch and the doors shut behind her. His podship's engine was muffled, but he felt the slight jolt when they disconnected. It was only then that he felt the first pang of helplessness. She'd taken his ship. That witch had taken his ship. But the Rampion had a second shuttle. His crew could still come for them. Would come for them. But then he sensed something new. A slight pull, a gentle shift, and the girl whimpered. The satellite's trajectory had been altered. Gravity was claiming them, drawing them out of their orbit. The satellite was falling towards Earth. What a fucked up way to send someone to their death, is letting them crash to Earth in a satellite. To ensure that their lives are filled with complete terror and waiting for the moment where it ceases and they get flattened like strawberry jam onto the Earth's surface. There's mean and there's cruel, and that was cruel. But also props to Sybil. That's a pretty badass thing to do. I hate her and I hope she dies. That was pretty badass. I don't like Sybil, but you gotta admit, she's got style. Chapter 10. He's attached, said Scarlet, watching Thorn's pod ship through the cockpit viewing window. That wasn't too embarrassing. Cinder propped herself against the doorframe. I hope he's quick about it. We have no way of knowing that this girl isn't being monitored. You don't trust her? Said Wolf. I don't trust who she works for. Wait, is that another ship? Scarlet jerked forward, pulling up a radar search on the screen behind her. Our scanners aren't seeing it. Wolf and Cinder clustered behind her, peering down at the pod ship, only slightly larger than Thorn's, as it neared the satellite. Cinder's heart began to pound. Lunar. It has to be, said Scarlet. If they're blocking the signals... No, look. The insignia. Wolf cursed. It's a royal ship, probably a thaumaturge. She's betrayed us, Cinder murmured, shaking her head in disbelief. I don't believe it. Do we run? And abandon Thorn? In the window, the lunar pod ship had connected with the satellite's second clamp. Cinder raked her fingers through her hair, her thoughts stumbling through her head. Calm them. Establish the decom link. We need to know what's going on. No, said Wolf. It's possible they don't know we're here. Maybe she didn't betray us. If they didn't pick up our ship on radar, there's still a chance they haven't had visual of us. Oh, God. Every time I read this book, I don't burp all day, the entire day, without a single one. And then I sit down to read, and it's because I've got pressure on my stomach as I'm sitting here reading a damn good book. Let me sit with my back straight, like my mama's proud of me. All right.
They would know Thorn's pod ship came from somewhere. Maybe he'll be able to get away, Aiko chimed in, but there wasn't the...
Oh.
Maybe he'll be able to get away.
Aiko chimed in, but there wasn't the normal enthusiasm to her tone.
Against a thaumaturge? You saw how well that worked out in Paris. So what do we do? Said Scarlet. We can't calm them, we can't talk.
We should run, said Wolf. They'll come for us next. They both looked at Cinder and realized with a jolt that they expected her to take charge, but it wasn't a simple decision. Thorn was down there. He'd walked right into a trap, and this had all been Cinder's idea in the first place. She couldn't leave him. Her hands began to shake from gripping the chair. Every second of indecision was wasted time.
Cinder!
Scarlet placed a hand on her arm. It only made her squeeze the chair tighter.
We have to...
Run. We have to run. Scarlet nodded. She spun back to the controls.
Aiko, prep dusters for...
Wait. Look, said Wolf. Beyond the cockpit window, a pod ship was disconnecting from the satellite. Thorn's pod ship.
What's happening?
Aiko asked. Cinder hissed.
Thorn's pod ship is coming back.
Calm him. Scarlet pulled the comm screen up.
Thorn, report. What happened down there?
The screen returned only static. Cinder chewed on the inside of her cheek. After a moment, the static was replaced with a simple text comm. Camera disabled. We're injured. Open dock. Cinder reread the message until the words blurred in her vision. It's a trap, said Wolf.
It might not be, she answered.
It is.
We don't know that for sure. He's resourceful.
Cinder!
He could have survived! Or it's a trap, muttered Scarlet. Cinder!
Aiko broke in, her voice pitched high.
What should I do? What should I do?
She swallowed hard and shoved herself away from the chair. Open the dock. Both of you, stay here. Absolutely not. Wolf fell into step beside her. She could tell he was in fight mode. His shoulders hunched near his ears, his hands curled into claws, his stride fast and determined.
Wolf,
Cinder pressed her titanium fist against his sternum.
Stay here. If it is a thaumaturge on that ship, Aiko and I are the only ones who can't be controlled.
Scarlet latched onto his elbow.
She's right. Your presence could do more harm than good.
Cinder didn't wait for Scarlet to convince him. She was already halfway down the ladder that dropped into the ship's lower levels. In the corridor between the pod ship and engine room, she stopped to listen. She heard the solid closing of the dock's doors and the life system pumping oxygen back into space.
Dock is secured, said Aiko. Life system stabilized. Safe for entry.
Cinder's retina display was panicking, as it tended to do when she was nervous or afraid. Red diagnostics flared up in the corner of her vision, laced with warnings. Blood pressure too high, heart rate too fast, systems overheating, initializing auto-cool response.
Aiko, what do you see in there? Aiko, what do you see in there? I can see that we need to get some real cameras installed on this ship, she responded. My sensors confirm that the pod ship is docked. I detect 2 life forms inside, but it doesn't seem that anyone has gotten out of the ship yet. Maybe they were too injured to get out of the ship, or maybe it was the thaumaturge, unwilling to leave the shuttle while there was still a chance they could reopen the docking doors and have everything inside sucked out into space. Cinder opened the tip of her left pointer finger, loading a cartridge. She'd used up all her tranquilizer darts during the fight in Paris. She'd been able to manufacture some weapons of her own, projectiles made out of welded nails. Really resourceful. We've just received another text comm from the ship, said Aiko. It says, help us.
Everything inside Cinder's head was screaming at her. Trap, trap, trap. But if it was Thorn, if Thorn was inside that ship, injured or dying. Clearing her thoughts, she reached up and punched in the dock's access code, then wrenched down the manual lever. The unlock mechanism clunked and Cinder held up her left hand like a gun. Thorn's pod ship was sandwiched between the second pod and a wall of cords and machinery bolted to the thick paneling. Tools for loading and unloading freight, fueling equipment, jacks, air compressors, pneumatic coils. She inched toward the ship.
Thorn?
She said, craning her head. She spotted a lump of fabric in the pilot seat, a body hunched over. Shaking, she swung open the door before ducking a few steps back and aiming her weapon at the body. His shirt was soaked in blood.
Thorn!
Lowering her hand, she reached forward, rolling him toward her. What happened? An orange light brightened in the corner of her vision. Her optibionics reminded her that her eyes were a weakness. She gasped and raised her hand again, just as he shot forward. One hand wrapped around her wrist, the other clamped around her neck. His movements so fast Cinder fell to the floor. For a moment it was Thorn on top of her, his blue eyes surprisingly calm as he pinned her to the ground. Then he morphed. His stare became cold and crystalline. His hair grew longer and lighter, and his clothes melded into the red and gray uniforms of the Lunar Royal Guard. Her instincts seemed to recognize him before her eyes did, flaring with violent hatred. This was not any Lunar Guard. This was the guard who held her captive during the ball, while Levana taunted her and threatened Kai, threatened everyone. But wasn't he? A fluttery laugh drifted through the air. Cinder squinted against the bright lights as a woman emerged from the pod ship. Right, the personal guard to head thaumaturge, Sybil Mira. Well, I had expected more from the galaxy's most wanted criminal, she said, watching as Cinder pressed her free hand into the guard's chin, struggling to push him away. The thaumaturge smiled, looking like a hungry cat with a new toy. Stars began to speckle Cinder's vision. Shall I kill you here, or deliver you in chains to my queen? She would cut off. Her gray eyes flickered toward the door. A guttural roar was followed by Wolf throwing himself against the thaumaturge and trapping her against the pod ship. The guard's hold slackened, indecision flashing across his face as he glanced up at his mistress. Cinder swung her fist toward his jaw. She felt the crunch and he reeled back, his attention back on her. Oof. Oh, but yeah, it must have been the titanium fist, so just thinking titanium hitting you right in the jaw. Oh, slack jaw, that will fuck him up real good. Cinder pulled her knees up, gaining purchase, and shoved him away. She scrambled to her feet, as Wolf grabbed the thaumaturge and wrenched her back. His lips curled, revealing his implanted fangs. The guard reached for his holster, drawing Cinder's focus. He pulled the gun out. Cinder raised her hands. 2 shots fired in unison. Wolf howled in pain as the guard's bullet buried itself beneath his shoulder blade. The guard grunted as Cinder's projectile found his side. Cinder pivoted, her aim seeking out the thaumaturge's heart, but Wolf was between them, a dark spot of blood sleeping through his shirt. Sybil's face was disfigured by fury as she placed her palm against Wolf's chest and snarled. Now then, she hissed, let's remind you of what you really are. Wolf snapped his jaws shut. A low growl rumbled through his throat. He spun towards Cinder, his gaze filling with bloodlust. Oh, stars, she murmured, backing up until she was pressed against the second pod ship. She held her hand steady, but she had no hope of hitting Sybil with Wolf in the way, especially now that he was under the thaumaturge's control. Gulping, she reached out with her mind, grasping for the familiar waves of Wolf's energy, his own signature of bioelectricity, but found something brutal and feral clouding around him instead. Wolf lunged at her. Cinder switched her target, reaching for the guard instead. It felt natural, the half-second it took to claim his willpower and force him into action. In a blink, the guard was between them. Hold on, let me take a moment and just talk about how freaking baller this is. Like, I don't want this to be understated, because it's really freaking cool, and I don't want it to go without being noticed. That this is now a power struggle between Cinder and Sybil, and how Sybil's using Wolf and Cinder is using Jason. Like chess pieces on a board, they're going at it. This is really freaking cool, okay? It's really freaking cool. Oh my god. Oh, it makes me think of I don't know what it is, but like Obi-Wan versus Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. That's what my mind goes to for some reason. Just, oh, it's so cool. It's so freaking cool. The guard was between them. He raised his gun, but was too slow as Wolf backhanded him out of the way, sending him sliding between the ship's landing gear. The gun clattered along the row of cabinets. Cinder skittered around the pod ship's nose. They made eye contact over its roof and hesitated, his fangs bared. Cinder's internal warnings were coming so fast they blurred together, pointing at escalated heart rates and an unhealthy increase of adrenaline. She ignored them, focused only on keeping the pod ship between her and Wolf as he prowled back and forth. But then his entire body flinched. Wolf turned and raced towards Sybil as another gunshot echoed through the dock. Wolf threw himself in front of the thaumaturge, catching the bullet in his chest. What the fuck? But then his entire body flinched. Wolf turned and raced towards Sybil as another gunshot echoed through the dock. Wolf threw himself in the thaumaturge, catching the bullet in his chest. Scarlet screamed from the door, a gun in her shaking hands. Panting, Cinder scanned for a weapon, a plan. The thaumaturge was backed into a corner with Wolf acting as her shield. The lunar guard was curled up beneath the nearest pod ship, hopefully unconscious. Scarlet lowered the gun. The thaumaturge would have no trouble controlling her. Oh, fuck. Don't tell me that Scarlet just shot Wolf in the fucking heart. Don't tell me that! No! No, don't fucking do that! That's not okay! That's not okay! Scarlet fucking shot Wolf! That's not okay! No! I don't like this! She's this alpha female. You can't do this to me! You can't fucking do this to me! Except the thaumaturge had doubt in her expression and a grimace on her face. A vein was throbbing in her forehead as she cowered behind Wolf. Cinder realized with some shock that it was almost as difficult for Sybil to control Wolf as it was for her. She couldn't control anyone else so long as she had him, and the moment she released Wolf, he would turn on her and the battle would be over. Unless she killed Wolf and removed him from the equation entirely. With the blood pooling and dribbling out of his 2 bullet wounds, Cinder wondered how long that would take. Wolf! That's not how she would say it. Patties. Wolf! No. Wolf! Sure. Scarlet's voice shuddered. The gun was still aimed at Sybil, but Wolf was still between them. Another gunshot made Cinder jump, the noise ricocheting off the walls. Sybil cried out in pain. The guard, not unconscious after all, had grabbed the abandoned gun, and he'd shot the thaumaturge. Oh, are you fucking... Hold on. Hold the phone. 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 Hang on. We need to go back a couple chapters. Not a couple chapters. A couple paragraphs. What the fuck? Right. Sybil knows that she can only control Wolf right now. Says the guard, hopefully unconscious. So, Cinder was not controlling Jason. So Jason shot Sybil of his own accord? What? Sybil hissed, her nostrils flaring as she fell to one knee, one hand pressed against her thigh, already covered in blood. The guard was kneeling, gripping the gun. Cinder couldn't see his face, but he sounded strained when he spoke. Oh, no, it can't be. What the fuck? Yeah. She's controlling me. The cyborg. Cinder's lie detector flickered unnecessarily. She was doing no such thing, although she had thought of it before. So he's using that as an excuse to attack Sybil. He's one of the good guys! Let's fucking go! Sybil shoved Wolf toward the guard. The energy in the room quivered, waves of bioelectricity steaming and shimmering around them. Sybil had released her power over Wolf. The gunshot had weakened her. She could no longer control him. Wolf collapsed against the guard, and they both crumpled to the ground. The guard grappled for purchase, keeping a tight hold on the gun as he shoved Wolf away. Pale and shaking, Wolf couldn't even fight back. Blood puddled around them, slicking to the floor. Slicking the floor. Wolf! Again, it's a girl. Wolf! Sure, fuck it. Scarlet raised the gun toward the thaumaturge again, but Sybil had already scrambled up, limping behind the nearest pod ship. Cinder dove for Wolf, grabbing him under both arms and dragging him away from the guard. He flailed his legs, his heels slipping on the blood, but otherwise offered no assistance. The guard rose up to a crouch, panting, covered in blood, his own side bleeding from Cinder's projectile. He still held the gun. As Cinder stared at him, she saw the choice. Take control of the guard before he raised the gun and killed her. Or take control of Wolf and give him the strength he needed to get out of the dock before he bled to death. The guard held her gaze for one throbbing moment before he hauled himself up and ran toward his mistress. Cinder didn't wait to see whether he was going to kill her or protect her. Clenching her fists, she blocked out everything around them, focusing only on Wolf and the bioelectricity that simmered around him. He was weak. This was not like trying to control him in their mock fights. She found her will slipped easily into his, and though his body protested, she urged him to stiffen his legs, just enough to take most of his weight off her, just enough so she could carry him, limping, into the corridor. She dropped Wolf against the wall. Her palms were sticky with blood. "What's happening?" Eiko wailed over the speakers. "Keep your sensor on this corridor," said Cinder. "When all three of us are safely out of the dock, shut the door and open the hatch."
Sweat dripping into her eyes, she rushed back into the dock. All she needed was to get Scarlet and let Aiko open the hatch. The vacuum of space would take care of the rest. She spotted the thaumaturge first, not 10 paces in front of her. She had a clear shot. Nerves humming with adrenaline, she lifted her hand and prepared a projectile. She took aim. Scarlet leaped in front of her, her arms out in a T. Her expression was blank. Her mind was under the thaumaturge's control. Cinder almost wilted with relief. Without hesitating, she grabbed Scarlet around the waist with one arm and raised the other to let off a volley of projectiles toward the thaumaturge. More to help keep her at bay than in hopes of doing any real damage. The last of her welded nails struck the metal walls as Cinder stumbled and fell back into the corridor. She noticed the orange light in her vision at the same moment she screamed, "Aiko, now!" As the corridor... Oh, no. As the corridor door zipped shut, she spotted Sybil racing towards the nearest pod, the glimpse of feet on the other side of the pod ship. The guard's feet. But... blue jeans and tennis shoes. Cinder shoved Scarlet's body away with a scream. The glamour vanished, along with the orange light in her vision. Scarlet's red hoodie flickered, transforming into the lunar uniform. The guard groaned and rolled away. He was bleeding from the wound in the side. She'd grabbed the guard. Sybil had tricked her, which meant, "No! Scarlet! Aiko!" She threw herself at the control panel and punched in the code to open the door, but an error flashed at her. On the other side, the docking hatch was opening. A curdled scream echoed through the corridor, and Cinder almost didn't realize it was hers. "Cinder! What's happening? What? Scarlet's in there! She has..." She raked her fingernails viciously along the door's airtight seal, unable to keep away the vision of Scarlet being pulled into space. "Cinder! The pod ship!" said Aiko. "She's taking the pod ship! 2 life forms aboard!" "What?" Cinder looked up at the panel. Sure enough, the room scanners indicated there was only one shuttle still docked. The thaumaturge had survived, and she'd taken Scarlet with her. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that's not good at all. Oh. Oh, no. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Sybil has Scarlet. They have Jason. Okay, but Jason shot Sybil, so we know that there's good in him. Wolf is with Scarlet, or with Cinder. He's bleeding to death, but he'll be fine, I guess. Thorn and Cress are crashing to Earth. Sybil is shot and wounded, which is what she fucking gets. Holy shit. And meanwhile, while all this is happening, Audrey's out there somewhere wondering why why Cinder didn't leave her more money. Chapter 11. "She has Scarlet," said Cinder. "Quick, close the hatch. I'll take the other pod. I'll follow them." Her words faltered, her brain catching up. She did not know how to fly a pod ship, but she could figure it out. She could download some instructions, and she would have to... "Your friend is dying." She spun around. She'd forgotten about the lunar guard. He was pressing a hand to his side, where Cinder's projectile was still embedded, but his attention was on Wolf. Wolf, who was unconscious and surrounded by blood. "Oh no, oh no." She ejected the knife in her finger and started cutting the bloodstained fabric away from Wolf's wounds. "Thorn! We need to get Thorn! Then we can go after Scarlet and I'll bandage Wolf and..." She glanced at the guard. "Shirt!" she said. "Shirt!" she said firmly, although the order was more to focus her own thoughts. In seconds, the guard's hands were working at her command, removing the empty gun holster and pulling his own blooded shirt over his head. She was glad to see a second undershirt as well. She had a feeling they were going to need every bit of bandaging she could find to staunch Wolf's bleeding. Eventually, they would have to get him to the med bay, but there was no way she could move him in this condition, especially not up that ladder. She tried to ignore the niggling thought in her head. Maybe that's not the right word to use, niggling. Thought in her head that this was not enough, that not even the bandages in the med bay would be enough. She grabbed the guard's shirt and bunched it against Wolf's chest. At least this bullet had missed his heart. She hoped the other one hadn't hit anything vital either. Her thoughts were hazy, repeating over and over in her head. They had to get Thorn. They had to go after Scarlet. They had to save Wolf. She couldn't do it all. She couldn't do any of it. Thorn! Her voice broke. Where's Thorn? Keeping one hand pressed in onto Wolf's wound, she reached for the guard with the other, grabbing his collar and pulling him toward her. What did you do to Thorn? Your friend who boarded the satellite, he said, as much as a statement as a question. There was regret in his face, but not enough. He's dead. She shrieked and slammed him into the wall. You're lying! He flinched, but didn't try to protect himself. Even though she'd already lost her focus, she could not keep him under her control so long as her thoughts were so divided, so long as this chaos and devastation reigned in her head. Mistress Sybil changed the satellite's trajectory, removing it from orbit. It'll burn up during re-entry. It probably already has. There's nothing you can do. No, she said, shaking her head. Every part of her was trembling. She wouldn't have sacrificed her own programmer, too. No, she wouldn't say it like that. She would say, she wouldn't have sacrificed her own programmer, too. But there was no telltale orange light in her vision. He wasn't lying. The guard leaned his head back as his gaze skimmed Cinder from head to toe, as if examining an unusual specimen. She would sacrifice... God, can I stop with the old man noises? She would sacrifice anyone to get to you. The Queen seems to believe you're a threat. Cinder ground her teeth so hard she felt that her jaw would snap from the pressure. There it was, stated with such blatant simplicity. This was her fault. This was all her fault. They'd been after her. Your other shirt, she whispered. She didn't bother to control him this time, and he removed the undershirt without argument. Cinder grabbed it from him, spotting the end of her own projectile jutting from his skin, just below his ribs. Looking away, she pressed the second shirt against the wound in Wolf's back. Roll him onto his side. What? Get him on his side. I'll open the airway. Help him breathe. Cinder glowered at him, but a 4-second net search confirmed the validity of his suggestion. Oh, okay, so that's the other way around. Roll him onto his side. What? Get him on his side. It'll open the airway. Help him breathe. Cinder glowered at him, but a 4-second net search confirmed the validity of his suggestion. Let's take a moment to realize. 4-second net search. So, get him on his side. It'll open the airway. Help him breathe. That's how long it took. And she eased Wolf onto his side as gently as she could, positioning his legs like the medical diagram in her brain told her. The guard didn't help, but he nodded approvingly when Cinder was done. Cinder? It was Aiko, her voice small and restrained. The ship had become dark, running only on emergency lighting and default systems. Aiko's anxiety was clouding her ability to function as much as Cinder was. What are we going to do? Cinder struggled to breathe. A headache had burst open in her skull. The weight of everything pressed against her until it was almost too tempting to curl up over Wolf's body and simply give up. She couldn't help them. She couldn't save the world. She couldn't save anyone. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know. Finding some place to hide would be a start, said the guard. I need to give him another voice. I need to find something. He's a royal guard. He's very proud. Aristocracy. Not Captain Carswell Thorne. But we need what we need. What we need. What we need? What we need. We'll fix it at the end of this chapter. Finding some place to hide would be a start, said the guard, followed by a ripping sound as he tore a shred of material from the hem of his pants. He winced as he yanked out the projectile and tossed it down the corridor, before pressing the fabric against the wound. For the first time, she noticed that he still wore what looked like a large hunting knife sheathed on his belt. He looked up at her when she didn't respond, his eyes sharp as ice picks. Maybe someplace your friend can get help, as a thought. She shook her head. I can't. We just lost both our pilots and I can't fly. I don't know how. I can fly. But Scarlet... Look, Thaumaturge Miro will be contacting Luna and sending for reinforcements, and the Queen's fleet isn't as far away as you might think.
You're about to have an army on your trail.
But...
But nothing. You can't help the other girl. Consider her dead, but you might be able to help him.
Cinder dropped her chin, curling in on herself as the warring decision in her head threatened to tear her apart. He was being logical. She recognized that, but it was so hard to admit defeat, to give up on Scarlet, to make that sacrifice and have to live with it. With every passing second, though, she was closer to losing Wolf too. She glanced down. Wolf's face was scrunched in pain, his brow beaded with sweat.
Ship, said the guard. Calculate our location and relative trajectory to Earth. Where is the closest place we can get to? Someplace not too populated.
There was a hesitation before Aiko said, Me?
He squinted up at the ceiling. Yeah, you.
Sorry, right. Calculating now.
The lights brightened.
Following a natural descent to Earth, we should be in Central or North Africa in approximately 17 minutes. A loose 1,000-mile radius opens us up to the Mediterranean regions of Europe and the western portion of the Eastern Commonwealth.
Oh, so they're above Africa. Go see Dr. Erland.
He needs a hospital, Cinder murmured, knowing as she said it that there wasn't a hospital on Earth that wouldn't know he was one of the Queen's wolf hybrids as soon as he was admitted. And the risk she posed to take him there herself, and how recognizable the Rampion would be, where could they possibly go that would offer them sanctuary? Nowhere was safe. Beneath her, Wolf moaned, his chest rattled. He needed a hospital, or a doctor. Africa. Dr. Erland. She peered up at the guard and for the first time struggled through the sluggish mess inside her head to wonder why he was helping, or why he was doing this, why he hadn't killed them all, why he was helping them. You serve the Queen, she said. How can I trust you? His lips twitched, like she'd made a joke, but his eyes were quick to harden. I serve my princess, no one else. The floor dropped out from beneath her. The princess. His princess. She knew. She waited a full breath for her lie detector to recognize his falsehood, but it didn't. He was telling the truth. Africa, she said. Heiko, take us to Africa, to where the first outbreak of leishmaniasis occurred. Are you fucking kidding me? He knows. But does he know? But does he know? But does he know? Like, well, yes, he knows. He knows that Cinder is Celine. But how does he know? Did Sybil tell him? Maybe he overheard Levana talking about it? No, Levana wouldn't be that careless. But he is the personal head guard to Thaumaturge Sybil Mira, so he has to know something. Levana holds all the secrets as queen. Sybil holds most secrets as second in command. But the guard of the second in command, technically third in command, I guess you would say, he should know something. And maybe he just weeded it out. Maybe he could feel it inside her. But he knows that that's Celine. And that's a fucking game changer. Holy shit. Oh, he must know. Maybe he knows from when Cinder controlled him with the bioelectricity and the glamour. Maybe that's it. Maybe he wouldn't recognize the fucking the energy, but maybe he knew something. Maybe that told him something. Maybe there's some psychic link. Maybe something happened there. Oh, Thorn and Cress are probably still gonna die. Tequila. Sorry. Dwelf. No, hang on. I need some water. Oh my god, there's so much going on. Sorry, I know I'm taking a second. My dog is napping in the sunshine on the patio, and I was looking over and it's like, you're so cute. I made her a dog bed. It's like a wicker basket with a pillow in it so she could sleep on that. But for some reason, she wants to sleep on the floor. Which, I mean, fine. You do you, pup. Whatever makes you comfortable. Sorry, Daddy's freaking out. The evil space priest just shot the moon baby princess, and now the head guard over the space priestess
realizes that the moon baby princess is real and is trying to help them, and they're all going to Africa to meet a moon doctor who's supposed to help the Wolfman. I want the juxtaposition of that the crazy moon priestess kidnapped the French girl and abandoned her head guard. So now the head guard realizes that the moon baby princess is alive, and the moon baby princess, the head guard of the moon priestess, the disembodied voice from the ship, and the Wolfman have to go to Africa to meet a moon doctor to save the Wolfman's life. While at the same time, the fugitive handsome captain is falling to Earth with the satellite girl, who this is her first time meeting someone other than the moon priestess captive, and now they're all about to die. There's a lot of moving pieces here. So they have to go to Africa to meet the moon doctor to save the Wolfman. That's the next goal. The next goal for the immediate crew, for Cinder and the team that is on the Rampion. They have to go to Africa to meet the moon doctor who will save the Wolfman. Cool. Fuck. So much is happening. Chapter 12. The fall was slow at first, gradual, as the pull of the satellite's orbit was overpowered by the pull of Earth's gravity. Ugh. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Thorn hiked up his pant leg, using his toe to... Oh, we're on the ship. Okay, the satellite. Ugh, make it stop. I haven't even eaten anything today. Why? Oh, it's because I ate a Subway sandwich yesterday, and now let's just make it a return. The fall was slow at first, gradual, as the pull of the satellite's orbit was overpowered by the pull of Earth's gravity. Thorn hiked up his pant leg, using his toe to pry off his left boot. The knife he'd stashed there clattered onto the floor, and he grabbed for it, awkwardly trying to angle the blade toward the blanket that was knotted around his wrist. The girl murmured around her gag and shifted toward him. Her binds were much more secure and complex than his own. The thaumaturge had only bothered to have Thorn tie his hands in front of him, but this girl had binds all down her legs, in addition to having her wrists fastened behind her and the gag over her mouth. With no leverage to press the knife against his own hands, he nodded at the girl. "Can you turn around?" "Can you turn around?" No, he would be frantic. "Can you turn around?" She flopped and rolled onto her side, pushing off the wall with her feet and to turn herself so that her hands were toward him. Thorn hunkered over her and sawed at the sheet that was cutting into her arms. By the time he'd hacked it off, there were deep red lines carved into her skin. She ripped the gag off her mouth, leaving it to hang around her neck. A knot of her frayed hair caught in the fabric. "My feet! My feet!" "Can you untie my hands?" She said nothing as she snatched the knife from him. Her hands were shaking as she angled the blade toward the binds around her knees, and Thorn thought maybe it was best for her to practice on herself anyway. Oh, well, it makes sense that she's doing that, though, because maybe she can put in a code that will save them. Like, I don't think that she would be able to because of how gravity works, but maybe there's something. Because the thing is that with how I'm not going to make this into a fucking science lesson, but to use this oddly satellite-shaped bottle of ink, it's actually perfectly, it almost looks like a... So, as it's crashing down to Earth, unless there... Put the fucking bookmark in there, so I don't lose place. Unless there's jet propulsion thing, or not jet propulsions, but like some sort of rockets or something on the sides that could be angled to help slow the course of descent. So as it's going, so as this is falling, if there's rockets here that are shooting out in this direction, that are instead of letting it shoot down, slowing the rate of travel as it goes down to where they can achieve new orbit around the Earth, possible? I don't think so, because given their rate of descent, I don't think that they would be able to, at least in a position to where the satellite would be able to retain orbit. It might help slow it down so the crash would be so bad, but I think that there's no way that they can escape this crash, at the very least. Sawing through the sheet, she looked like a madwoman. Her brow wrinkled in consternation, her hair knotted, her complexion damp and blotchy, red lines drawn into her cheeks from the gag. But the adrenaline had her working quickly, and soon she was kicking away the material. "My hands!" "My hands!" Thorn said again, but he was already grasping for the sink and pulling her. She was already grasping for the sink and pulling herself up on trembling legs. "I'm sorry, the entry procedures," she said, stumbling out into the main room. Thorn grabbed the knife and clambered to his feet as the satellite took a sudden turn. He slipped, tumbling into the shower door. They were falling faster as Earth's gravity claimed them. Using the wall for balance, Thorn rushed into the main room. The girl had fallen too, and was now scrambling to get over the bed. "We need to get to the other pod ship and disconnect," said Thorn. "You need to untie me." She shook her head and pressed herself against the wall where the smallest of the screens was embedded, the screen that the thaumaturge had meddled with before. Strings of hair were sticking to her face. "She'll have a security block on the ship, and I know the satellite better, and... Oh, no, she screamed, her fingers flying over the screen. "She changed the access code!" What are you doing? The entry procedures! The ablative coding that should hold while we're passing through the atmosphere, but if I don't set the parachute to release, the whole thing would disintegrate on impact! The satellite shifted again, and they both stumbled. Thorn fell onto the mattress, and the knife skittered out of his grip, bouncing off the end of the bed, where the girl tripped and landed on one knee. The walls around them began to tremble with the friction of Earth's atmosphere. The blackness that had clouded the small windows was replaced with the burning white light. The outer coating was burning off, protecting them from the atmosphere's heat. Unlike the Rampion, this satellite was designed for only one descent towards Earth. "All right." Forgetting about his binds, Thorn swung himself over to the other side of the bed and hauled the girl back to her feet. "Get that parachute working!" She was still wobbly as he spun them toward the screen and dropped his arms over her, forming a cocoon around her body. She was even shorter than he'd realized, the top of her head not even reaching his collarbone. Her fingers jabbed at the screen as Thorn widened his stance and locked his knees, bracing himself as much as he could while the satellite shook and rocked around them. He hunched over her, trying to hold his balance and keep her steady while codes and commands flickered and scrolled across the screen. His attention flicked to the nearest window, still fiery white. As soon as the satellite had fallen far enough into Earth's atmosphere, the autogravity would shut off, and they would be as secure as dice in a gambler's fist. Oh, hang on. Now that's a pretty fucking baller line. That's a pretty baller line. I need to notate that. I need everyone to put respect on that line right there. As soon as the satellite had fallen far enough into Earth's atmosphere, the autogravity would shut off and they would be as secure as dice in a gambler's fist. That's pretty goddamn cool analogy, dude. I like that. Oh shit, that was cool. "I'm in!" she shouted. Hacker voice. "I'm in." Thorn curled the toes of his one shoeless foot into the carpet. He heard a crash behind him and dared to glance back. One of the screens had fallen off the desk. He gulped. Anything not bolted down was about to turn into projectiles. "How long will it take to—" "Done!" Thorn whipped her around and thrust them both toward the mattress. "Under the bed!" He stumbled and fell, dragging her down with him. The cabinet swung open overhead, and Thorn flinched as a rain of canned goods and dishes clattered around them. He hunkered over the girl, deflecting them away from her. "Quick!" She scurried forward, out of the ring of his arms, and pulled herself into the shadows. She backed against the wall as far as she could, both hands pushing against the bed frames to lock her body into place. Thorn kicked off from the carpet and grabbed the nearest post to pull himself forward. The shaking stopped, replaced with smooth, fast descent. The brightness from the windows faded to a sunshine blue. Thorn's stomach swooped, and he felt like he was being sucked into a vacuum. He heard her scream. Pain and brightness exploded in his head, and then the world went back black. I'm sorry, did Thorn just get hit in the fucking head? He just got hit in the head. He just got hit. Everything was a projectile. She screamed because something... Hang on. Pain and brightness exploded in his head, and then the world went black. We have two things we can take from this. Either he's unconscious or he's blind. Because the way they worded that is vague enough to where it could be just that he was unconscious. But it's also different enough to where it could mean something else. Yeah. Book 2. The witch snipped off her golden hair and cast her out into a great desert. I'm going to upload this section that we've got done so far before we go into chapter 32. So recap. The Hidden Moon Princess is going with the help of a moon guard to Africa to meet a moon doctor to help the Wolfman. The French girl is with the evil moon priestess on their way to the moon. The fugitive captain and the captive satellite girl are crashing towards Earth. All the while all this is happening, Pearl is still being a bitch. Thanks for watching, everybody.